Hey there. In this video, I'm going to talk about an app that I've created that's going to give you the comparison between the actual CPA that's been obtained and the target CPA that you're given over any date range. And then it's also going to give you what's called the typical variation zone or a normal variability zone within which the CPA, the actual CPA, has been varying over that period of time. Why is this important? Because you have set a target CPA, and we all know whether it's a target CPA or a target ROAS, the campaign is always not going to be able to meet that target, right? So I'm obviously talking about Google Ads campaigns. We know that it could be above or below, depending on several circumstances. We're not going to go into the specifics of those things here in this video, but we know that as practitioners, that there's always going to be a delta between the target ROAS or the target CPA that you've set and the actuals that you have got. This is also true for the math CPC that is being set. Suppose it's a manually set CPC, and there's a delta between that max CPC that you have set and the average CPC that is actually obtained. So this concept, in principle, is actually going to be applicable to all these things, whether it's CPC or CPA or ROAS. In this specific app, this is about CPA, and you can see here it's open right in front of us. This is called, I've called it the dynamic CPA analysis app with typical variation zone. So let's actually see and run through this app first. So this is the link for it. And once you have the app, this is a free app that I'm sharing with everyone. I'm just upgrading it for a project of mine. So this is the basic version of it. There's going to be more upgraded versions. So this is the start date and this is the end date. And you can select any date range here. And if you click on this, it will give you a calendar drop down and you can select the start date and the end date. Depending on that, there will be the number of weeks, and that is the number of values that you have to enter. This is the actual CPA values. So why is this equal to the number of weeks? Because obviously every week, this is a weekly variation that's being calculated. So you will have to enter the exact number of weeks data for the CPA as you have selected in your date range. And then you have to simply select your target CPA or select as in enter, and you can also increase or decrease it through this plus and minus buttons. And then you just hit analyze data, as simple as that. Let's see what happens when I do that. So this is for 27th October to 24th of November. So 5 weeks have been included in that date range. And you can see here, this is the output that it gives. This is the comparison of the actual CPA and the target CPA and the dynamically shaped typical variation. So as you can see, this is a very useful visual way of representing how well it is actually doing when you're setting a target CPA. What is the level of variation? And an important point to note here is what is the key takeaway of this? The key takeaway is where does this dotted line really reside in comparison to this shaded region? This shaded region, you have to understand, is the typical variation. How we are calculating that is basically a dynamic method. This dynamic method is called rolling averages or rolling standard deviation. And I'm going to talk about that in my short note that I've created, the guide. I'm just going to show that in a moment. The basic math of it's not very advanced, nothing to be scared. But it's not going to be possible by using only normal averages or normal variation concepts. So this dynamic variation is actually important to know, and we'll see why, because this is the range within which the target CPA should be existing. This is where it should reside. So you can see that for a lot of it, the target CPA lies. So the target CPA is constant here. This is how the thing has been conceptualized. So if it's a very long date range and if you change your target CPAs, you will have to enter dynamic target CPA values. And I will, upgrade the switcher app to also incorporate dynamically upgradable or dynamically changeable target CPA. Or of course, you can enter target CPA values as well, depending on what rate range that what was the target CPA. But it's expected that over a limited period, within a finite period, a small period of time, you should not be changing target CPA or the target ROAS. It's not good practice anyway. It's not best practices. So that's why for now, the target CPA has been kept as a constant. That's why this is the constant line here at 220. And I can see that, I would say roughly around 60 to 65% of it probably is just lying within this shaded region, right? So the more of this dotted line actually lies within the shaded region, the better it is, because the actual data is varying like this, right? It can vary, it can go up, it can go down. This is normal, right? So how do you really decide then whether it is good or bad? How closely is the fit of this curved line with respect to the dotted line, the target CPA? That fit is decided by this variation zone. So if it lies mostly within the variation zone, say 70 to 80% or more of it, then you know that over a period of time, it is actually doing reasonably okay, that your target has been met to a large extent around the target, because the variation is going to be there, but roughly on an average, that's what's happening. So how you define that typical variation zone is very important in this context, and that's what we'll see in a moment. But let's just change the date range a little bit and see how it works. So if I just click on this here and I select a date range, say the 4th of November, and then it's going to go because the date range has been changed. So suppose I click on analyze data here, you'll see that a message pops up here. You'll have to provide only 3 values to match the number of weeks in the date range. So that's what I was saying. You have to enter the number of actual CPA values, which equals to the date number of weeks in that date range. So 4th of November to the 25th of November, there are 3 weeks that are being covered. So so you will have to take out a couple of values from here. So obviously, whatever will be the values, I'm obviously going with dummy values, and see, once I do that, that message goes away, right? And then I click on analyze data, and then it's going to give me the graph, because this has now 3 CPA values, and it's giving the typical variation zone from within it. Now, from this only, if you are trying to wonder, like, what is the basis of creating this typical variation zone, it's very useful. Let's actually look at one more example before we dive into that. Let's take another bigger example now. Say from 3rd October to this date range. Once again, if I hit analyze data, it's going to ask me this time to add more values, right? So exactly 8 values I need. So I need 5 more. So now suppose you'll see that if it's a constantly decreasing trend, that will also be captured in the typical variation zone. So let's have a high one first. Then let's say have this one. Then let's say have this one. Then let's have this one. Let's have an even lower one. Then let's say have this a little increase. Then suddenly, right? I mean, these are common, right? Then you have maybe an even bigger increase, and then finally another decrease. So let's now hit analyze data and see how it looks like. See how well it has captured. Now, what is happening here? You see that the variation zone has become much slimmer, right? It's not that fat a zone anymore. And the reason is because these values are very closely, packed together, the actual CPA values. So basically what's going on is that the more the variability in the data in the recent past, the more is going to be the spread of the variation zone. And that's basically the concept of rolling averages. So I'll just jump into the math document that I've created. I'm not going to explain in details, but I'm going to show you what's really going on. So there are two concepts here, rolling standard deviation and rolling mean. So let's actually look at rolling mean first, because rolling standard deviation is calculated using rolling mean. So rolling mean is basically this thing. It's a summation of I to t, and I is defined as t minus n plus 1. So basically n is the window size. So if you have a window size, so if you are talking about a rolling window of say 3 days. So in this example, for instance, what you're seeing in this app, this is using a rolling window of I think 2 days, right? So it's 2 days, and basically, if you take a rolling window of 2 days, meaning that you subtract at any given value for the at time t, you just subtract the window size, say t minus 2, and then you just add 1. And you take a summation of that value that you get there over all the values of the metric, right? And divide it then by, say, 2, if n is 2, right? That's the window, rolling window. So you're basically taking an average. So it's basically an average of over 2 days, rather than just taking, an average which is constant, right? So you're taking an average every alternative block of this particular window that you're talking, right? So it keeps changing. That average keeps changing. So it's a rolling mean based on that time slot that you're taking. So that's why the recent variation is captured into the calculation of the typical variation zone. So you see, for example, if you have CPA values like this, then the rolling mean of the previous 2 days is taken. Then for this previous 2 days are taken. 230 and 180 for this one. 195 ke liye, we have 180 and 210, like that, right? So that is the way this has been done, right? So that is the definition of rolling mean. Rolling standard deviation uses that concept of rolling mean and has a very similar concept. This is basically the normal formula for standard deviation, which is it's a summation of over that that period of time, and you basically have the values, the summation of all those values minus a particular average. This can be any average. In this case, this is the rolling mean. Square of that, and then within the square root, you also divide it by the n. So that's basically it. And when you have a rolling mean uh, calculated, you already have it 215, for instance, in this data. And for week one, by the way, standard deviation is 0. So standard deviation is calculated in this way. You just subtract it, just like I said. So there are two values, right? So for week two, there's week one value and week two value, right? So week one, 200 minus 250, as you can see, rolling mean. 230 is second day, minus 215 again, and then you get a standard deviation. So like that, you can get the standard deviation for the different points. So this is the rolling concept. This is basically the dynamic concept, using which it's a very simple concept, but to arrive at this concept, I have to think a while and you know, uh, arrive at this idea. And that's important. You actually get similar sort of graphs in Google Ads as well in the Insights tab. The problem is only limited to 7 days and 28 days, and you will not get it for all kinds of average metrics, which you can compare between the thing that you are applying and what you're getting back in return. So like I said, this principle can be applied to CPC, CPAs, and ROAS as well. So there's a lot of Python code that's going on behind it. Libraries like Pandas, NumPy, and Matplotlib, they are getting used for plotting, of course. And then there's this calculation of the rolling means, as you can see, the rolling windows, the upper bounds and the lower bounds, they are being dynamically chosen. This is the upper bound and lower bound. So at every period, those are getting chosen. So that's basically what all this, this particular Python code is doing. As you can see, this is a similar sort of output here. So that's going on in the backend behind this app, this Python code. But you don't have to go through any of that. It's a ready-made app, DIFO item for you, plug and play. Just put in this data here, and it's good to go. So in the future versions, I'm going to be upgrading it. Of course, like I said, there's going to be more complexity added and more stuff added, most likely, and it's part of the project. And I will, of course, the very first thing that I'll do is I'll add the ability to make the target CPA variable as well. So I hope this will be useful. This will definitely be useful because you will be able to see at a glance the level of variability that is there, right? And whether it is acceptable or not. See, for instance, in this case, it's actually way, this dotted line, the variability within the data sets, among themselves are not varying much, but with respect to target CPA, they're way off because the target CPA is completely outside of the shaded zone, right? So you can see from the data set also, this point here is close to 20, but generally speaking, it's not, this target CPA is completely outside of the shaded zone. So that's not good. So it's not meeting the targets. It's something that that requires intervention, requires special attention. So that's pretty much what I had to share. This is an app that I'm going to be sharing in the the description part, the link to it. And yeah, let's see you in the future videos. Thank you.